What is happening, yo? Oh, it is 1, 2, 3, 4 p.m. right now. On my little lunch break for work. Luckily, get to work from home today. I'm going to have to go in tomorrow, but neither here nor there. If you tuned into the last episode, we talked about how different meditations can work different parts of the brain. In the same way that if you were to exercise, do bicep curls, do shoulder press, do squats, those work different muscles of the body. Now, there are benefits to doing different types of meditation exercises to strengthen different parts of the brain. It helps different areas of the brain work better together and create new and more neural connections and overall good shit that happens. Blah, blah, blah. That said, I kind of had the idea to create a custom AI agent in Claude that creates or gives me different meditations to do and tracks each one I do each day and logs what areas of the brain those meditations work on so that the next day it tries to find a different exercise to work a different part of the brain. And it's pretty cool. It's working out pretty nicely so far. And that's what I wanted to talk about today is the meditation I did yesterday that we got to do some research. Let's just put it that way. I got to look some shit up because it was very interesting and it made me feel things I haven't felt in a long time and things I've honestly forgot about, but it shit you not if there ain't something to this. And that's what I want to get into today and look up. So to let you in on that secret and what the hell that meditation was and why I think cool shit was happening, let's look at the let's look at the tail of the tape here. So yesterday, I said, give me a meditation, and it gave me this thing called the Breath of Three Gates, and this is what I did. And essentially, wait, why the fuck? Oh, this ain't my last session. Ah, shit. This is the wrong. No, this is it. Yeah. So it thought, okay, sorry. It gave me a new meditation thinking I did the Three Gates one the day before, and that's because I prompted it earlier saying, hey, give me a meditation, and then it gave me one. And I'm like, oh, wait, I don't want to do that one. Give me a different one. And then it tried to give me another one. It doesn't matter. Here. Yeah, I didn't do the Breath of the Three Gates yet. Go back to that. So here we are. This is it. Basically, what you do is you sit there and you breathe up each region of the body. So you close your eyes, and when it's going to make more sense when I explain the instructions. Trust me, the instructions are an important detail. So when you close your eyes, you immediately engage what's called interoception. Interoception means you are more you focus on your internal environment. When we open our eyes, the visual centers of our brain are activated, and this takes up a large portion of our brain activity, which means we're not as easily able to focus on internal sensations of the body, which is why we close our eyes. So when you close your eyes and you take a deep breath in, you start to feel the sensation in the lower stomach, and then you move up and you feel it as you breathe in to the rib cage and the heart, and then you breathe again up, and then you can kind of feel it into your throat and into your head. Now, for me at first when I did this, I could feel into my stomach pretty good. I take a good bit of deep breaths and do some breath work. So I felt that pretty good. But as we started to move up, as I started to go up into a breath where you go up into the heart in the rib cage, and definitely getting up to the neck, I couldn't feel it as strong. I couldn't feel the sensations nearly as much. That is until I kept doing it. As you go up, and you start to feel it come up, and then when you exhale, you imagine like a line going down. So let me explain that real quick. I'm sorry, I'm not doing this very well explaining myself. So basically, the idea is that you breathe in, feeling into your diaphragm, and then you feel up into your heart center as you're breathing in. And the idea is that on the top of the exhale, or when you're You can't take any more oxygen in. You have moved your attention all the way up through your throat to the top of your head. So at the top of the inhale, you're feeling into the top of your head, and then on the exhale, you go back down that same path all the way down. What I'm trying to say is that when I would breathe in, it was harder for me to feel when I would get up to here. And what's really interesting is that the more I did it for like 10 to 15 minutes, it was like I could feel easier, and it was like I could go a little bit higher. It felt as though I was literally like working something up. It felt like I was moving. This sound woo-woo spiritual bullshit, but it sounded like I was like moving energy or something. It felt like I was moving, at least able to put my attention more easily up into my throat and face, and eventually I was able to get it further up to the top of my head. And by the end of it, I almost had like a line or like a feeling of like lightness and clearness, and it felt so good, and it felt like a movable piece of energy or some shit going all the way down, all the way up into my head. And I can easily breathe in, and it would just feel like I could go all the way up, and it felt so light and so good. And then I could go all the way back down and follow the same path down. For those that have never done that, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain, but I have in my meditation history years prior, when I was super deep into meditation, this was when I first got into it, I would do these. I did this meditation. I didn't realize they called it the 3 gates or whatever. I didn't know there was a name for it and all those different instructions. But I came across this meditation before, and I remember one time specifically, I was going on a trip with my brother to the Grand Canyon. We went to the Grand Canyon, we went to Zion National Park, and I remember on our flight from Atlanta to Phoenix, I put the Calm app on, which is a meditation app, and it had a breathing counter where it like kind of breathes with you, where it makes a sound on the inhale, and it stops, and it makes another sound for the exhale. And I did that 3-part kind of breath where I breathed all the way up and breathed all the way down. And I did that for literally, I think, like an hour on the plane. And I remember after that hour feeling so light, so clear, so refreshed, renewed, just like a good feeling in your body that it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe because it's not something people do in daily life. I mean, how many people do this shit? Have you met anyone that has told you about, oh yeah, put your energy or your attention into your belly, and then as you breathe, move your attention up into your heart, and then move it up into your throat and head. You probably never heard that in your life. I mean, that's not something people do unless you're a yogi person or you are a nerd about meditation like I am. And so I say this because something seems to be happening. Like I said, it reminded me of that feeling I had on that plane on that trip a long time ago, and it felt as though the more you did it, even if you're just taking a deep breath in the middle of the day, and you've kind of already cleared out, and you have a good base and warmed up and have a clear flow all the way up to your head and down, it's like you could just do it. You could just go all the way up and go all the way down. And it almost feels like it's a practice, and it almost feels like you're clearing or making room for, especially when I got to my throat. It felt like the more I did it, it felt like I was clearing a pathway, and I was getting brush or debris out of the way, and I would be able to go a little bit higher at each breath until it was just automatic going up and down. And so I'm curious about this. I want to know what the hell is going on, because this isn't just the meditation it gave me. There is roots to this. So before I kind of dive into the biology or the physiology and what's happening here, let's look at the origin of this, because obviously I didn't come up with this shit. So the oldest origin is from Tao, the Taoist tradition. This is a ancient spiritual tradition that comes out of China. This is one of my favorite shits of all time. I love Taoism. Um, yeah, so here it says this conscious breathing through the three, I've never even heard of this term, three danchins, and that appears in their Taoist text going back to at least the Han Dynasty, around 200 BC. The danchins, lower part below the navel, the middle, and then the upper, the third eye, the head, were understood as a reservoir of, I think this is qi. Let me look this up. I think that's what that means. I'm not 100% sure. Let me double check. Because it's like you've heard that word, qi. Qi, China, energy stuff. Let's see. Qi is the fundamental vital life force or energy in Chinese philosophy and traditional Chinese medicine, representing the animating power behind all things. Wow, including health, movement, and emotions. It flows through the body in a continuous flux, and its balance determines physical health and mental well-being, while its deficiency causes fatigue and illness. Yeah, I don't know nothing about this. I'm not saying that this is necessarily true or something that you need to go. I'm just researching it. I'm looking it up. I had an experience yesterday, and I'm just more curious about it. So, the breath was a primary tool for filling, circulating, and refining vital energy between them. Texts like the, I'm going to butcher this, Huangjing Qing describes interior visualization practices remarkably similar to this structure. Now, in India, with yoga, breath work and energy is also something that shows up. And I know a lot of us have heard of chakras. I think it's something similar dealing with energy in, how the fuck do you chakras? 7 main energy centers in the body, originating from ancient Indian philosophy that align along the spine from the base to the crown. They act as spinning wheels of energy corresponding to nerve bundles, organs, and emotional, physical well-being. When open and aligned, they promote harmony. When blocked, they can cause physical or emotional imbalances. So while it's kind of different, pretty much same as China. They're saying like there's this life energy circulating through the body. And what's interesting, and I want to make a note of this because I want to look that up, is how the frick did China and India come across the same things in spiritual practice? Now, is it something that, did they have historical ties? Was it like the Silk Trade Road where some dude in India told the Chinese, did the Chinese tell the Indian, and that's how they did it? Or were there two separate things and they both stumbled across the same conclusions, the same things? Because that would be pretty interesting to come up, to do different experiments and come up with these same kind of answers. And it would make me wonder and give more credence to this idea if people from different lands that had no communication, came up with the same conclusions. So with that, let's go back to the history a bit. So with the Indian parallel, it says the Indian parallel is striking. Pranayama traditions in yoga, particularly those described in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, 15th century, described a near identical 3-part breath called Durga Pranayama, belly, ribcage, chest filled in sequence. Whether this developed independently or through early Silk Road cross-pollination between Indian and Chinese practitioners is an open scholarly question. Okay. So they're not exactly sure if one told the other or they came across it on their own. But both traditions were clearly working on the same physiological territory. So I want to look this up. I think this is very fascinating, something to take into consideration of what is going on here from a biological, physiological level. What is happening? So I did this meditation yesterday where I felt into my lower abdomen and working all the way up. And at first, going into the neck was difficult, or the throat area. It felt like I couldn't get up into there and have that light, spacious feeling that I felt in my rib cage and lower belly. And it kind of was that way up into the top of the head as well, meaning that it took some time, and that over time, it was almost like a high tide at the beach where it slowly started to wash its way further and further up the shore. And that just makes me wonder what is happening here at a biological level, physiological level, but also what do the spiritual traditions believe, like the Tao and yoga in India? What are they saying is happening? Because it did feel almost, I don't know if I would use the word a blockage, but it did feel like I was almost clearing a path, and it got easier the more I focused my attention and kept going up and down the path with more repetitions. All right, let's see what it says. What you're describing is fascinating. The fact that it resolved over repetitions rather than staying stuck is significant. Let me give you both lenses. So the throat and upper chest are among the most chronically braced regions of the human body. The muscles around the larynx, the scalenes in the neck, and the intercostals in the upper ribs, these tend to hold a lot of unconscious tension, partly because this is where we literally suppress sound, emotion, and expression. When you swallow grief, tighten against fear, or hold back words, that's where it lives in the tissue? Is this the spiritual part, or is this saying this is science? What you were likely encountering was a combination of two things. First, actual muscular resistance. Those areas were simply less available to the breath because the muscles weren't used to releasing in that direction. Second, and more interestingly, reduced interoceptive resolution, meaning your brain had less detailed, less practiced awareness of those regions. The insula, which maps internal body states, has higher resolution in some areas than others based on how much attention you've historically directed there. Your belly and chest likely had richer maps. So for those that don't know what that means, what it's saying is that if you, for instance, do body scans, if you put your attention, if I say right now to feel your hand, can you feel it? The part of the brain that does this, or at least the part of the brain that I know that does this, at least part of it, is the insula. And it's in charge of internal mapping and be able to feel different areas of the body. Now, not only are you able to feel into different parts of the body, but it has a map through different parts of the body, meaning you could be better at feeling into your stomach because you often feel hungry, and your brain has a better map of feeling directly into the stomach, whereas maybe you don't place your attention, obviously, into your left big toe. And so maybe it'd be kind of hard to feel down to your left big toe because you don't practice or have worked out that mental map as easily. And I think that could be something done here with me, is that I do a lot of breath work, and so I feel into my ribs and into my belly quite often, whereas I don't often go into the throat. So that's what I'm kind of thinking is happening, at least to some degree, is that the mental map of my throat is just not as defined, and the more I did it, the more I kind of built those reps, and the more I built that neurological connection to that area of the body. Yeah, and that's what it means by your belly and chest likely had richer maps, and the throat and crown, the top of the head, had a lower resolution. What changed over repetitions is that you were literally building interoceptive resolution in real time. The insula was updating its map. Yeah, the high tide feeling you described is almost exactly what neuroscientists would predict. Attention directed repeatedly to an area increases cortical representation of that area. which feels subjectively like the space is opening up or becoming more available. Now, let's look at the spiritual side. In classical Taoism, in the Nidan, or whatever, inner alchemy lineage, what you encountered would be described as chi blockage. So this is where it does get a little woo-woo, a little spiritual, but let's see what they say. You know, they would use almost exactly your word, what word? And they would use almost exactly your word. Maybe I said blockage. The three danshans are meant to be connected by channels similar in concept to the Indian nadis. I don't know what that is. And stagnant or blocked chi creates precisely this sensation of thickness, resistance, or inability to penetrate a region with awareness. The upper danshan around the third eye and crown is actually considered the most difficult to open and the last to become accessible in many Taoist development maps. It's not a beginner's territory. The fact that it began to open through sustained repetition is entirely consistent with how these traditions describe the process. They would say you were clearing the channel, not imagining it. The practice of moving attention deliberately up and down the same pathway, which you did, has a name in Taoist lineage, the microcosmic orbit in its preparatory phase. I don't know what that. You run awareness up the front, down the back, or in your case, up the central channel repeatedly until the pathway became fluid. The repetition isn't redundancy, it's irrigation. It's kind of making way for it. All right. The Indian framework maps almost perfectly onto your experience, but uses different vocabulary. The three regions you were breathing through, which is specifically associated with expression, truth, and the place where inner experience meets outward communication. Above that, Anjana, the third eye, and okay. The throat chakra, this is a lot of words, is described in yogic anatomy as more commonly congested centers in modern people, precisely because so much of civilized life involves suppressing authentic expression. What you felt there wasn't incidental, though yogic explanation would be the prana, their word for chi. Oh, that's interesting. Had been moving freely in the lower centers, but had accumulated a kind of resistance at the gateway between the heart and the head. The progressive clearing you experience, the high tide, is what they would call a pranic opening. So it does, pranic opening, and the fact that the sustained breath attention accomplished it is exactly what the pranayama is designed to do. You use the breath as the solvent, or the clearing thing. Both Taoist and yoga share a conviction that where attention goes, energy flows. Yeah, I forgot about that terminology. That's important. Oh, and I didn't even say it. This episode, 23 minutes in, and I'm saying what we're talking about. This is all about energy. This episode is on energy. It feels like something is there whether where attention goes, energy flows. That is the central through line here. I'm writing this down. You can't see it. Basically, to me, this means both things are true. Possibly. The map of the brain, or the map of the body, where you're interoception, where you're able to put your attention, there is a map. And the more you place your attention there, the stronger that mental map gets. That's what physiology says, like the science shit. We know that. We know that parts of the brain, specifically the insula, has maps to feel into different areas of the brain. And the more you do, let's say, body scan meditations, you will be able to have a kind of better or more defined, higher resolution map of your body and be able to feel into different parts. Whereas a person who's never done that, They don't really have a map, and they would have to practice. Now, where the spiritual part comes in, so the physiology is true. It's not like the science is competing with the spirituality. They often go hand in hand. And so now that we have the science aspect, is there something to this energy part of not only are we having the map created, but is the energy, is there something to the idea of where your attention goes, that energy flows idea? And so that's where you get into, well, if you don't have a map here, if you don't have a map for your throat, for instance, maybe of like a mental map, then energy isn't flowing in there, flowing to there. I'm working this out in real time, so bear with me. I'm not using my words clearly because I'm trying to get to a high tide of understanding myself. So let's continue reading, and we'll keep doing the thing. They share a conviction where attention goes, energy flows, and that blocked energy in a region corresponds to avoided experience, suppressed emotion, or simply unfamiliarity. And that's what I've been saying, at least. Neither tradition would call this metaphor. They'd call it physiology, just a different physiological map than the Western one. The remarkable thing is that the modern neuroscience is arriving at similar conclusions through completely different methods. Interoceptive attention genuinely changes tissue availability, autonomic tone, and cortical mapping. The traditions got there through, this is using a lot of big words. All right, I'm going to have to ask what all the hell this shit is. I don't know. What do you mean by tissue availability, autonomic tone, and cortical mapping? And then you use the word phenomenology. I don't know what any of this means. But I will say that it does seem to me that both can be true. The physiology of the body and the science that we are arriving on today is directly related to the spirituality of the ancient past. I have to stop it because it wants to speak back to me, and then it goes through each word like a sing-along, and then it takes an hour for it to go all the way down. So I just stop it, restart it, and it just generates the entire text answer. Tissue availability. So this means how freely a part of your body can move, expand, or respond. Muscles that are chronically braced or held, even subtly below conscious awareness, are less available. They don't fully participate. So when you first tried to breathe into your throat and it felt thick or I didn't feel thick. I couldn't really feel anything. That's low tissue availability. By the end of the session, the muscles and fascia in that region had released enough to actually, it's releasing. That's interesting. Because that kind of reminds me of yoga. Because in yoga, like stretching yoga, you get into postures or positions and it feels real tight. Like if you ever try to stretch and it's like, oh, like that hurts, kind of. It's tension. And if you stay with it and you stay in that position and be patient with yourself, you start to release. It starts to open up. And I've noticed for me with yoga, I actually did yoga today. That was the meditation given to me by the meditation agent. Well, I'm not going to lie, I kind of cheated. I had it, I was like, I want to do yoga. Give me the parts of the brain that it works and all the different shit about it. Because I just wanted to do yoga. But yeah, when you go into it, if you haven't done yoga, you go into a deep pose. I mean, it is intense. It feels like, oh, like this is a lot. And then sometimes I start busting out laughing, and I don't know why. Like it sounds, I sound like an insane person, but it feels like this release of something, and it's hard to describe. And it's like it's kind of like what this is, and that was the parallel I'm drawing. I'm finally going back to this point just before I go off the rails. Is that it feels like you're releasing something in yoga. It feels like when you let go of a muscle and you put your attention to it and it starts to expand, it's like energy gets released. And it's almost like the same kind of thing is happening when you just place your damn attention into a part of the body without even stretching it. It's just like if you put your awareness into your throat, for example, keep going back to that because that was the one that I had trouble with. If I keep going back to that over time, you build that mental map, and it apparently you loosen the muscles in that area. And when you loosen, if it's something's tight and then it loosens, there is a release or an opening. It kind of reminds me right now of like a flower opening. I don't know. When you first breathed into your throat, it felt thick or blocked, and it felt like you released. Yeah, tension letting go. And that could be the energy thing. That could what be spirituality they mean by the blockages. Autonomic tone, nervous system runs in the background. Oh, heart rate, digestion, all that shit. Things that just happen automatically. Sympathetic, that's the gas pedal, alert, activated stress response, and parasympathetic, that's the brake pedal, rest, digest. So tone just means which direction the system is currently biased towards. High sympathetic tone means you're alert, you're on high alert, and that's tightness. So that would be the tightening. High parasympathetic tone feels like the exhale after a long day, the breath work you did, especially the long exhale, was directly shifting. Oh, it was shifting your tone, I see, towards the parasympathetic. Okay, I get that now. So basically, there's two kind of modes to the nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So when it says we're shifting our tone, I think it just means it was shifting to the parasympathetic side. Okay. Cortical mapping. Oh, this just meant the shit I've been talking about with the internal map of your body. How much it knows about each part of the body and kind of remembering where to feel into. Okay. Yeah, what the hell is this word? Oh, it's the study of direct experience, what things actually feel like from the inside before you interpret or explain them. When ancient practitioners sat down, breathed, and carefully compared notes on what they noticed, that's phenomenology. And it's kind of, I guess, what I'm doing right now. I didn't know there was a damn word for it. That's interesting. Basically, the understanding of experience. It's a common example, but what I'm about to say is an example. You can talk about basketball all day long and watch people dribble. You can watch people shoot. You can watch NBA. You can watch college, whatever. It's different than the experience of playing the game. And so there's a different understanding and a different level of phenomenology from that experience. And whether that be talking about sex and being a virgin versus experiencing it firsthand. There's quite a big difference, you know what I'm saying? Anyway. Here we go. So this is where it gets genuinely interesting. The philosopher Thomas Nagel and the neuroscientist Antonio Damasio come from completely secular directions, have both essentially argued that consciousness and body are not two separate things that happen to interact. They are two descriptions of the same thing. I agree, sirs. And the more, if you do ever get into meditation, I mean, imagine you might have at least some interest if you are somehow still listening at 34 minutes. That is, to me, the beauty of meditation, yoga, breath work, these kinds of things, is that they give you a direct experience to the thing. and that's why I gravitate towards them. And especially with my own spirituality, is I'm not a this is my personal opinion and belief, is that beliefs can go so far. Following a templated plan given by someone else, that's great, but it's just an idea. And until you feel something from that idea, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, anyone can memorize the periodic table, but unless you make some chemistry, do something with it, and experience it firsthand, it's kind of hollow. It's kind of dry. It doesn't have that much meaning, because the biggest, most important, the most real things in life are our experiences and experiencing something rather than just hearsay or reading or writing. Take that for what you will. So what the ancients, so this is it. They're saying they're two descriptions of the same thing. So while the ancients called chi and prana moving through channels, a neuroscientist would call the same thing interoceptive signals traveling through the vagus nerve and insula. They're saying the same shit. That's the beauty of science and spirituality, is that they're not two different things. It's the same thing. Same phenomenon, two different languages. The Taoists didn't have the word vagus nerve. The neuroscientists don't really have the word for chi, but they're pointing at the same river. So I can get down with that. That makes total sense to me. What I find interesting, or I'm wondering about, is like the mental map of interoception with physiology. That makes complete sense. The kind of chi thing or prana is what I'm wondering about, in the sense of where your attention goes, energy flows. Now that is an interesting concept, because if I don't put my attention ever into my throat, it would make sense that if we assume that where attention goes, energy flows, we could assume that if there's no attention there, no energy flows there. And now I'm drawing a random comparison that I thought of, and I'm curious of what your thoughts are, is like the double slit experiment, where people will say, or there's been observations where if attention is put onto a particle, it behaves differently if it's not being observed. And so it does seem that in science, there is something to be said about observation and about attention, and how that even directly impacts the behavior of particles, which I believe could be synonymous or another word for energy. So I'm curious your thoughts on marrying those worlds together, or that phenomenon. Mm-hmm. So it looks like I'm way off base. Well, that was embarrassing. I thought I had something cool, but maybe not. Okay, so the double slit experiment shows that particles like electrons behave like waves, spreading out and creating an interference pattern. Until you set up a detector to measure which slit they go through. The moment you measure, the wave patterns collapse and they behave like particles. So like basically when you try to measure them, they act different. They like, what is going on? And they do something different. Here's the part that often gets lost in popular tellings. The observation in quantum mechanics has nothing to do with human consciousness or attention. Oh, okay. It means physical interaction. Oh, a detector, like a photon bouncing off the particle. I'm so sorry. I thought it meant actual attention. Any physical apparatus that leaves a trace. Oh, so it's literally like when something's measuring or detecting, it's bouncing its own shit off of it. You could set up the experiment, walk away, come back, and it would still collapse. No human mind required. The word observation in physics is unfortunately misleading because in ordinary language, it implies a conscious observer. Okay, so that's my bad. So ignore that, please. I'm sorry. Yet something is still here. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's a hell of an expression. I'm sorry. I want to look that up. No, I'll look it up later. I'm getting way too off track. Your underlying intuition is pointing at something genuine, just operating at a different scale. At the biological level, attention is not passive. When you direct attention to your throat, you're physically doing something. You're increasing blood flow to that region. You're activating neural circuits that map it. You're changing muscle tone, respiratory patterns, autonomic signaling. Attention at the human biological scale is a causal force. It genuinely changes the physical territory it lands on. That's not mysticism, that's measurable. So where attention goes, energy flows is literally true at the physiological scale. The question is whether it scales all the way down to quantum particles, and that's where evidence gets thin. And that's fine. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. The serious thinkers in both Taoism and yoga never claimed to be talking about subatomic particles. They were talking about the body, the breath, and the mind as a unified system. Qi and prana framework was always a map of biological and experiential reality, not a theory of particle physics. Okay. Okay, yeah. Well, that's interesting. So the take home, what I'm trying to get at is that there is something to be said for where attention goes, energy flows. If you do yoga, if you do this if you try out this meditation, you may feel your maps start to wake up. You feel like some things are loosening, and whether that's just a biological happening and releasing of tension because you are putting your attention into those areas, that's still something to be said. And I will say that when you do put your attention and go all the way up and all the way down, it does feel like a lightness, like something is being released or being able to move through. I stand by that statement. I'm going to pause real quick. 1 second. Let me pause. All right, I had to look something up. Felt like I was not sure where to go, and I wanted to take a second, take a breath, and see where we are. So I asked a different agent about the kind of physiological processes or just what's going on here. And basically it came to the same conclusion that we've already come up with, is that both are true. Whether that be psychologically or physiologically or spiritually, that you're doing both. You could be moving energy or attention, and then you're also releasing emotion or stress through your muscles. So energy is something definitely to pay attention to. And now I have another thought. So I've been doing a podcast episode on energy, and this just makes me think of that not only yoga releases tension, doing these types of breath work releases tension, but what about exercise and how doing hard, vigorous exercise releases energy, as well as the fact of needing to rest or restore energy through sleep, and eating healthy or not healthy affects your energy level. So I guess I'm just wanting to now go into just a quick topic or whatever on energy as far as these other perspectives and how it all kind of ties together into the same bucket of just energy overall. Create a through line through all these different mechanisms and talk about those mechanisms. So yoga, breathwork, hard exercise, sleep, food is they're all inputs and outputs of the same underlying system, your nervous system's ability to regulate itself. Exercise is the most aggressive form of energy release. Vigorous physical effort burns through stress hormones that were designed for short-term use. The body needs a discharge mechanism for those chemicals, so hard exercise is the most efficient one humans have. So kind of going off topic here. Man, this episode is all over the place. I'm not going to lie. We're going to talk about energy. I feel kind of doo-doo right now. This feels like it's been all over the place and just not that great. It's like now I'm just getting into other aspects of... So the idea is that energy is going to be a subcategory within my contentment category, where I kind of map out different life practices and skills, and one of the categories is contentment. One of those right now is subcategories within contentment is called feel good fundamentals, and I'm renaming it to energy because I think it's a more appropriate, more encompassing term. Because if you think about it, feeling good is an energy, and there's chemical releases and things that happen, and by doing hard exercise, by doing yoga, by getting good sleep, by eating healthy food, all affects your, not only your physical energy and how good you feel, like how much energy you have, but also emotionally, which is also a type of energy. So I just think energy is a better all-encompassing word. And I talked most of the time about my experience with the breath work and a bit about yoga, and then I went down a stupid rabbit hole of the double slit experiment, and then forgetting about the other aspects of exercise and sleep and all these other things. But we'll go through it. This was the intention. So yeah, exercise is great. If you don't exercise, obviously, before anything, before meditating or any shit, exercise is numero uno. You gotta exercise. It may not feel good at first, especially if you're not used to it. Your body's like, "What the hell am I doing? This sucks, you idiot. Quit doing this." But the more you get used to it, start small, build it up, and it becomes something you look forward to, and it becomes a almost therapy for yourself. Last night I went and did sprints outside just because it's like I took a nap and I felt crabby, felt like an idiot, so I was just like, let me go run. And sure enough, afterwards, felt good. Sleep, where energy is actually rebuilt during deep sleep. The lymphatic system flushes metabolic waste from the brain. HGH is released for tissue repair, and the nervous system consolidates and resets. You don't restore energy during sleep metaphorically. You do it literally at the cellular level. Now with food, people underestimate mitochondria convert nutrients into ATP, the actual currency of cellular energy. Poor nutrition doesn't just make you feel sluggish. It literally reduces your cell's capacity to generate energy at the biochemical level. Blood sugar stability, in particular, is one of the biggest drivers of perceived energy throughout the day. Diet's also huge. Unifying idea. The allostatic load. He uses fancy-ass words on me. Your body is constantly trying to maintain balance, homeostasis, against stressors. Every mechanism here is either adding to that load, poor sleep, bad food, chronic stress, or discharging this energy. Exercise, breathwork, yoga, rest. When the load exceeds your discharge, when this is greater than this, you feel depleted. When discharge keeps pace, you feel energized, regardless of which tool you used. Well, to sum up, energy is definitely a thing. Whether we attribute it to being chi or prana, I think now is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether we use those woo-woo words or not. The most important thing is the phenomenic, the experience of the concept of experiencing it for yourself. And if you feel something like I did with my breathwork session, of feeling it all the way up, and it felt like I could go through, and it felt light, and it felt clear, it felt refreshing, more power to me. That's something that you can't take away because I felt it. Like, you can't make that shit up. It felt real. And there's something to that, whether science can explain that or not. And luckily, it looks like science is now starting to be able to. We know for sure that it maps. There are mental maps to your body, and the more you put your attention there, the more you can release stress, release tension, and kind of feel through that part. It's also true in life. Where you put your attention, where your focus, that's where shit's going to happen. Where attention goes, energy flows, even in your work or with your thoughts. If you put more attention into your thoughts about cars, you're going to have more thoughts, more energy towards cars. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a literal translation like I think I was trying to do a bit earlier, but rather just an experiential one. That said, next episode, I think I will be doing a revamp of my categories, and I'll show you a bit of my notion and the different areas of the kind of my mental map of everything we work on. I'll show you that real quick. Like right here, 1 second. Yeah. So yeah, the contentment, we have the feel-good fundamentals. I will be revamping this to a different category as well as reducing the number of subcategories in other categories. So if you are curious about the different areas of life or things you want to improve on, whether that be learning to manage your thoughts and mind a bit better, dealing with suffering and anxiety, learning to be more content or happy or feel good in your life, better connection, relationships with yourself or others, and want to see how I work as far as thinking about through all these different things, that is what we will be focusing on in the next episode, starting with, like I said, the energy subcategory of contentment, which will be taking the place of feel-good fundamentals because I think it more encompasses the more of an umbrella term where feel-good is one aspect or a specific type of energy, but energy itself has a more all-encompassing term that covers more and has a deeper understanding for people in the future. That is all for now. Thank you all for getting through that if you did. Just like anything else, you got to practice. You got to practice doing this. The more you record, the better you get. And this is only, I think, my maybe 30th recording of this style of podcast. So I'm obviously a work in progress. I'm feeling into my own neck through the podcast, so to speak. All right, that's enough. See y'all.